Now I private students teach YouTube. Я очень скучаю Россию. Мое сердце балета. I made up that word. That's not even балета. I have no idea where that even came from. Привет всем, с вами я, Jenny, и это College Russian. In yesterday's video, we talked about the various stages of grief that we Russian learners go through, and I promised that today we would kind of look at some examples of bad grammar. So the little surprise here is that we're going to look at the bad grammar of bald and bankrupt, and we're also going to look at my bad grammar, because of course I'm not going to just trash on Bald and Bankrupt for his bad grammar. No, I think it's really awesome anytime anybody tries to learn a foreign language. So today's video is going to be pretty embarrassing for me because, I'm going to show you my bad grammar mistakes that I made when I was first learning Russian. I wrote in my journal in Russian, and it's honestly, you guys, it's hilarious. So definitely stay tuned for that. So today's video is called His Grammar is a Mess, and So Was Mine. And then what you're going to find out in this video today is that's okay. It really is. It's okay if your grammar is a mess to a certain extent, right? To a certain point in your language learning. So we're going to talk about what the second language acquisition research and theory says about that, of when it is okay to speak with bad grammar and what happens if you do it for too long. And then I'm also going to, this is going to be amusing for you, I'm going to show you kind of like how English would sound if we really messed with our grammar. Obviously, we don't have cases in English, but how English would sound if we completely disregarded all of the rules. So you'll get to see some of those example sentences. I'll do them for you in a Russian accent, just for your amusement. It will be very funny. And so stay tuned for that, not to mention the part where I make a fool of myself by showing you my journal where I was trying to write in Russian. Okay, so let's take a minute and listen to this first clip of Bald and Bankrupt. So real quick, if you don't know who Bald and Bankrupt is, he's a big YouTuber. He's done a lot in Russia, former Soviet Union, and he went on as a guest onto this channel, No Fuckers, and the host, Roma, I really like him. I actually really like his channel. So they sit and they speak in Russian the whole time. And it was super interesting to listen to, and it really is a great kind of linguistic study. Obviously we won't watch the whole thing here in today's video, but I will link to it down in the description box below. So let's go ahead and listen. And what I want to show you is how they're conversing back and forth. Roma understands him. So I will, after he speaks, we'll just take little snippets and I will point out his mistakes to you. So let's go ahead and listen.
У меня, просто, автоматически как-то это происходит.
Я путешествую в Россию, и когда я столкнулся с людьми, в принципе, они все спрашивают, как вас зовут, откуда, почему вы здесь, в Россию. Так я уже привык отвечать, это вопрос.
Стандартные такие.
Да,
почти все одно и то же.
Да, не надо думать. Вы уже знаете, что они будут сказать, и что я буду сказать.
Сейчас, наоборот, я...
А сейчас
это
надо
тест такой, да?
Да, конечно, да. Да, потому что я хочу использовать, мне надо использовать слов, которые сейчас не используют.
Okay, so here's the text of what he said, and in yellow are the mistakes that he made. What I want to point out, once again, is we can understand him. Roma understood him, right? He understood him. I'm sure people watching this video understood him. So even though he has these mistakes, it never gets to where like Roma doesn't necessarily understand. Sometimes Roma does have to ask for clarification, but people understand him. So let's look at these mistakes. Я путешествую в Россию. And then I can't hear the end of his words, which is very typical for learners. They swallow their endings so as to disguise the fact that they have no clue what they're saying or what they're doing. И когда я столкнулся с людьми, столкнулся, I'll give it to him. It should technically be like сталкиваюсь, but it's fine. С людьми, они все спрашивают. Okay, that's the wrong verb conjugation. It should be спрашивают. Почему вы здесь в Россию? Suddenly we're getting accusative case where it should be в России. Why are you here in Russia? Я уже привык отвечать And then he didn't use so отвечает is the wrong version of the verb, and then the asterisk shows where he really needs to put a na in there for that to make sense. So he's talking about how he really has kind of a memorized script in Russian that he just says everywhere. They ask the same questions over and over again, which is why he's coming across to you as being, oh, so fluent. Towards the end of the video, he's going to start to break down a little bit as he gets out of his comfort zone. So what I want to say about his Russian is what I call survival Russian, i.e. caveman Russian, okay? So, and that's great. Seriously, if your goal is to just go to Russia and travel and be able to order a hot dog, or like what he loves to do everywhere he travels, seduce women, then yeah, this Russian it's good enough. Now, if you want to kind of achieve any level of depth in your understanding of the culture, you're going to need to be able to speak a little bit better. So this phenomenon in second language theory and acquisition is called fossilization. And this is where, for whatever reason, you have reached your desired level in the language, and you're okay. So again, what happens at this level is you become impervious to instruction, right? So it becomes really, really hard for you to learn new things at this level. But because the brain is a muscle, once you fossilize, you are now no longer going to get the cognitive benefits that come from pushing yourself. So for those of you who just, love the dopamine and that feeling that you get when you learn a new word, or you got to start a conversation with somebody on the street, or just knowing that you're doing something that is really, really healthy for your brain, i.e. learning a language, if you let yourself fossilize, or if you get to the good enough stage, you're not going to feel that excitement anymore. So the other problems with Baldy, the way he speaks in Russian, again, I want to emphasize, this is awesome. This is awesome that he taught himself, and he should be proud of what he has achieved. I'm just using him as an example to kind of illustrate some different problems that we as language learners face. So the other two things is that people are not going to take him seriously. And we're going to watch a couple of clips here where he's trying to give advice, and he starts to really have a hard time expressing this, and he starts to use the word blin way too much. It's very inappropriate. And then you're gonna notice that Roma starts to finish his sentences for him, which is what natives do when you're getting a little bit annoying to listen to, when it's getting painful for them to listen to you. So let's watch these next couple of clips and see two of these problems in action.
На то, чтобы выучить, да, поэтому, могу сказать, это круто, действительно.
Можно сказать, что я знаю, что много людей хотят говорить на русском, да, много иностранцев, да, и они спрашивают меня, как вы это сделали, да, потому что они хотят слышать, что у меня есть секретный способ, да, знать русский.
Суперспособность.
Да, что я буду сказать, ой, только делать это для 5 минут каждый день, и через 6 месяцев...
Да, 25-й год.
Да, нету, прости, но я скажу прямо, правда, нету
секретного способа.
Да, вот, только надо тратить время, говорить с людьми.
Никакого шортката.
Да, шорткат нету. Шорткат это, говорит каждый, часто с людьми. Практика, это ваш шорткат. Но это еще, это долго пути до момента, когда вы будете говорить, чистый русский.
Да. Слушай.
Okay, so here again in the yellow, we see the mistakes he's making. So he's saying something like, я знаю, что много людей хочет говорить на русском, много иностранец, да? So we can start to see that he's breaking down because he's starting to да, he almost cannot even get out full, comprehensible sentences. So the grammar's wrong. Я знаю, что много людей. Много иностранец should be много иностранцев. Then the next thing he says is я не спрашиваю меня. I don't even know what word he was trying to say there. Как вы это сделали? Good job. That's the perfect way to phrase that. He's probably heard it at some point and he just memorized it, and sure enough, great, it came out awesome. Как вы это сделали? Потому что они хотят, he's using the wrong conjugation, should be хотят. Они слышат, что у меня, and then something. Again, notice he starts to become harder to understand as he's now out of his comfort zone and talking about something that he probably hasn't practiced 100 times. And then he says, что я буду сказать, надо только делать это для 5 минут каждый день, so сказать, это should be, я буду говорить, надо делать это для 5 минут, doesn't really sound right, like, надо заниматься этим 5 минут каждый день, so we needed a different way of phrasing that, because he's Englishizing that phrase. Then he says, he doesn't know the word for shortcut, and then so he says, это, говорить часто с людьми практика, and then he starts mumbling something, and then we get some more, это еще это, это долго пути до момента, когда вы будете говорить чистый русский, right? So we start to see these blins throwing in. And a lot of them are like, he can't finish his sentences. So again, that should be это длинный путь, это долгий путь до того момента, когда вы будете говорить на чистом русском. Again, but notice, Roma understood him. And Roma thinks he's cool, and probably most people in Russia, when he came down into their small town, were like, whoa, a British guy speaking Russian in our town, and they were thrilled. And so of course his Russian feels good enough to him, and that's awesome. And if that is his goal, that's awesome. I majorly applaud it, and I'm not gonna trash talk him, because I'm not going to trash talk his Russian. I'll trash talk him as like a person, but I'm not going to trash talk his Russian, because yeah, that's more than most people can say that they've achieved in their life. So that's awesome. A little bit. So let's do some second language acquisition theory and science behind this. So when I was talking about people won't take you seriously, you're going to be very limited in the situations that you can operate in. So for example, I really would put him, according to the Common European Framework, I would really put him at the high A2 or B1, because A2 is he can say what he needs to say, things he's memorized, things he said a bunch of times. Now B1, understand the main points of regular situations. Yes, he's awesome at that. He does a great job understanding. Produce simple texts on topics which are familiar or of personal interest. Yep, because he's practiced saying that. Everywhere he goes, he has to explain who he is, about his YouTube channel, etc. So good. Now, where we have a problem is describe experiences, events, dreams, ambitions, and briefly give explanations. Remember how he started to really have a hard time even giving us full sentences when Roma asked, like, what kind of advice would you give people, you know, on how to speak Russian, and what did you do? Notice how he can't give explanations of that. And then something as abstract as dreams and ambitions, he's going to majorly start to crumble. Now, up at these higher levels, you have to be able to do things like, you know, negotiate a price on something, complain to a manager. Like, you know, I can't imagine him with his level of Russian being able to go over to Russia and convince Russians that they should, you know, read more Western news because blah blah. Like he doesn't have that ability. Can you imagine this guy trying to console grieving parents at a funeral that their child died in a tragedy? Like, oh, примите, мои, yeah, like, no, he's not going to be able to do anything like, you know, that, again, of substance, really, in the language. So again, I want to emphasize again, if your goal is to connect with the culture, to better understand the people, have serious, you know, deep, insightful conversations with these people, you gotta elevate your Russian a little bit, and you really gotta get rid of the grammar mistakes because they're annoying. So that's the next thing I'm going to tell you about. So when we speak with grammar mistakes, it's annoying. The scientific way of explaining this is these concepts. The concept of accentedness, intelligibility, and comprehensibility. So this is what my thesis was on. So accentedness is essentially how do the sounds sound coming out of your mouth? Can you roll your R's? You know, can you palatalize your L's? Do you know the L versus R distinction, like for Asian speakers? And then comprehensibility is how difficult it was for the natives to understand you. If they're really straining, like, you know, and they can't really understand you and they have to ask for a whole bunch of clarification, you are not very comprehensible. And then the big one is intelligible. Essentially, can you communicate? Can you do a back and forth so that you get your needs met or so that the native speaker gets their needs met? This one's tricky, and all of my students who study with me privately know how much I emphasize asking questions so that you can get your needs met, so that you can inquire for information, so that you can build a friendship with somebody. This is where this comes in, intelligibility. Can you just do the whole back and forth involved in communication? We talked about in our stages of grief that people get frustrated when you try to speak without the cases. And so another way of saying that is it's annoying, right? It's annoying to have to listen to. And I'm going to illustrate right now with some English examples to kind of prove my point. So what we need to understand is that in Russian, cases, they hold in them a lot of meaning. And so the closest thing we have in English, whereas Russian uses cases, we lean heavily on prepositions and word order. Oh my goodness. Word order is very important in English, has zero importance in Russian. So I'm going to speak we're going to revisit some of the mistakes that I used to make in Russian where I would just leave out the cases completely. So for example, где можно купить гитара? So it should be где мне можно купить, and then гитара should be an accusative case. It should be гитару. Где мне можно купить гитару? That's fine. Somebody can easily understand that. That's no problem. Now the big problem is when I was trying to ask a question. Because I was trying to do it like just translating word for word from my English brain. And so this is how it comes out. So, какая станция я надо выйти на? So in my English brain, this makes sense. Which station I need to get out on, right? No, this is полный бред. This is like complete gobbledygook in Russian. And again, I wouldn't have got my needs met. They wouldn't have known how to help me because they wouldn't have known what I was asking. So what this should be in Russian is, and again, my students who tutor with me know how much I drill you on how to ask questions. На какой станции мне надо выйти? So you cannot end a sentence in a preposition in Russian. На какой станции, I'm putting it into prepositional case. Мне надо, dative case, выйти. Okay, so let's now see the English equivalent of this so that you English speakers can understand the pain of bad grammar. Here we go. So just a quick reminder that in these bad English examples, word order is going to be all over the place. There are going to be no prepositions. Okay, there are going to be no prepositions, so we don't know exactly what they're trying to say. And then I might confuse pronouns. I might say me where I should have said I, or an I where I should have said me, etc. So let's see. Here's my bad English, and just for amusement, I'll do it in a Russian accent. Not saying Russians actually speak like this, but just to keep it fresh. So here we go. You will tell little myself. I am a state not well known. Located, it is East California state. 2003, Russian started studying me. Now I private students teach YouTube. Good. So if you have context, you probably know what I was trying to say. Now, if you don't know that I am from Utah, which is east of the state of California, and if you don't know that I started studying Russian in 2003, and you don't know that I have private students and teach on YouTube, you would have been really struggling to make sense of all of that. But because you have context, you made sense of it. So the difference is, though, what happens when you don't have that context? What happens when you have a problem and or you want to start up a conversation with somebody who you don't know and they don't know you? You can't rely so heavily on context to help scoot you along. Okay, so now for the part you all came here, is you came to see me make a complete fool of myself, I'm assuming, right? So to reward you for sitting and listening to me rant and talk about accent and intelligibility, I'm going to reward you with this journal entry from my journal. Okay, this is my journal. I've always kept a journal. This was from when I lived in Russia. And then at this point I have come home from Russia and I'm missing it terribly. I just feel like I can't live without it. And so I'm writing in my journal. I'm trying to pour out my heart and soul in Russian, you know, and try and be like poetic and whatever and talk about my love for Russia. Okay, so I hope you enjoy this. Okay, so here we go. Let's look at it. Я очень скучаю Россию. Мое сердце балета. I made up that word. That's not even балета. I have no idea where that even came from. Я никогда хочу забыть. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is I miss Russia. My heart hurts. So it should be я очень скучаю по России. Мое сердце болит. And then я никогда хочу забыть. Just my spelling there. Я беспокоюсь, что я буду забыть. Мою дорогу. Oh, look at me. I'm like aware that of accusative case. That's adorable. So you see me go back in there and correct it. Мою дорогу. And then вкус. I have no idea what I'm trying to say here. Вкус России, like maybe the taste of Russia. And then жумы. I have no idea what жумы is. Зеленый лес. The green forest. I did okay there. Я опоюсь. Look at this. I figured out. Like, that's not a word in Russian. Я опоюсь. It's not a word. I think I'm trying to say я боюсь. Я боюсь. Like, I'm scared. Что это было все просто мечта. So I'm trying to say that I'm afraid that that was all just a dream. But that's not the correct word for dream. It should be сон. All right. Anyway. Я желаю что? Можно пожить. And then look at me. Suddenly I'm just using English letters. But I'm putting the word Anton into instrumental case, so good for me, but for some reason I'm writing it with English. And then или Неля. So Неля and Anton were my friends from there. Сейчас. Я надеюсь, что когда я вернуться, again, didn't even bother to conjugate my verb there, все будут помнить. Again, that's not a word. I don't know if that's supposed to be понимать or помнить. I have no idea. И быть счастливый видеть меня. Okay, so what I'm saying is, I hope that when I return, everybody will remember or understand me and be happy to see me. So that's hilarious. Again, that's me. That's my that's my Russian as of 20 years ago. And so I shared that with you. So I officially am asking you to please not worry about making a fool of yourself in these beginning levels. Always just be trying to get better. And it's okay if you're not perfect. So in our next video, we will talk about the final stage of grief. Which is, you know, if you look at this official description, it fits very nicely into this category of testing / acceptance, seeking realistic solutions, finding a way to move forward. Because that's precisely what I'm going to be doing for you with this textbook that I'm writing and the accompanying videos that will go with it, is helping you find a way forward through that final stage of grief that's like, the only way out is through. So come back for the next video and I will start you onto the path of strategies you can start on now, how to best get yourself into shape to do this sort of boot camp for the cases that I'm going to be offering in my textbook. And then, oh my gosh, I'm going to tell you something that's going to blow your mind in the next video about why Russian has cases and English doesn't. So definitely come back and come see me in the next video that will be coming out on my channel in this series about the cases. Хорошо, это все. Пока.